people don't take healthcare as seriously as other things they purchase, and why wouldn't they take it as seriously as other things they purchase?
That's a great, yeah. I mean, I've seen this, and I feel like I've actually kind of researched this a good bit because, when you are purchasing a car or a TV or something, you spend hours, if not days, doing just that, researching stuff. And, we very blindly go into a doctor's office or a surgery or whatever. We don't really know all the details of what's happening. We just rely on information we hear one time, and then we're good with it. We don't know what infection scores and quality scores and, different things like that. So I don't know why we're not good consumers of our own health care at the end of the day. Health insurance has just become like a ticket into the doctor's office. It's your access card. But what is it really? What are you getting from that? And so I think there's a huge discrepancy of how health insurance was created and why it was created to what we're seeing now. And so, the model itself, we can make arguments of what's the right model, but in this current model, you have very limited ability to kind of win. And if you're not being a good consumer of your own health care, you're definitely coming out on the wrong end.
Do you think that it starts before healthcare? Do you think it starts with personal responsibility? And then, that's a bigger question, societal question.
Yeah, I mean, when you start dealing with behavioral change, yeah, that's a tough topic. But too many people do kind of blindly go about their day and not fully own the consequences of their actions. And I think that's probably a universal statement beyond just health insurance. But, if you are consistently making choices that are going to hurt your health, it's going to cost you, it's going to cost us money down the road.
I think it also comes down to a moral and ethical question. I'll pose an example to you. Let's say you've got a small company, 50 to 60 employees. Not all the employees know each other, but one employee has a child or just any family member with a condition that may cost millions of dollars a year. So morally and ethically, how do you handle that? Because if you leave them on the plan, then somebody that they've never met, their family will be affected by that one person that is not an employee of the company, doesn't produce anything for the company, and they quite frankly have never met or will ever meet. But if that person doesn't have access to the coverage, they're going to die. How do you explain that to a business owner or an employer that says, what do I do in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough spot for anybody because you got, the human side, you want to help people. But at the end of the day, that's kind of where we hang our hat on, because those solutions actually do exist. They're a little bit more outside the box, but they're totally available in that situation where you can actually help that person who has that catastrophic diagnosis actually get the medical care that they need, and it doesn't hurt the actual company, just as you described.
Why don't brokers know about that?
Think about how when you're working at large agencies, right, and your experience in kind of the products that you were, I want to say forced to sell, but highly encouraged to sell, those types of things didn't make the cut. And so, it's a matter of being willing and open to learn beyond just what's the, quote, easy button.
Where do you see insurance going?
I really feel bad for companies because the market of underwriters, those establishing what the rates are going to be, are getting harder and harder to find competitive rates. And so I think businesses are going to have a really hard time offering healthcare that is actually affordable. So what does that mean? You're going to have a lot of smaller or a lot of businesses, not just smaller, but businesses in general, going to a model where it's not based on claims. So there's some solutions out there that kind of get back into some of the individual market stuff. And then I think your larger self-funded type companies, those will still be there, but they need to kind of wake up to the cost containment solutions and strategies that are out there and not just kind of rely on the way things have been done in the past. The middleman type market, or some of the plans that are out there now, I see those kind of going away. So what do you think?
I see the trend with pharmacy costs. That's what worries me the most, because we're not, in my opinion, we're not treating people anymore. We're not getting to the root cause of why someone is sick. We're just providing medication for them. And there's a race to the marketplace right now with new medications that simply want to mask what's going on. But if you're watching TV between 6 and 8 at night, you know that the medications they're advertising probably have more side effects based on the small print than the positives. I mean, anytime you're taking a medication that has a chance of death, well, I take that medication. But always is my belief, until there's been personal responsibility and people taking ownership of their own health, then things are never going to change.
Well, you think about, in Washington, there's more healthcare lobbyists than, auto, steel combined. So what possibly can actually happen?
Correct, because they're going to keep prices high. Those lobbyists cost money. All those costs are baked into the cost of healthcare. How do we educate people better? How can, as brokers, we do a better job of educating our clients, given the things that I just said about personal responsibility, about HR staffs being overworked, about CEOs just driving a bottom line? If you mix all those things together, how can we better educate them? What are some quick things that we can do to make them remember, make them utilize, and make it simple?
That's a great question, and I wish there were some simple things beyond, to me, everything stems from kind of top-down leadership. So you need a whole culture, you need a company that really buys in to understand that we're all in this together. You can hand out flyers, pamphlets, things to remember. Hey, don't forget to set up your telemedicine before you go on vacation, sort of things. But unless you really have the cultural buy-in that, if I choose the ER versus the urgent care, that costs are somehow trickling down to affect my whole company. And you've got to have a culture that really buys into, we're in this together.
Great. Michael, after being with the big box stores and seeing what they've offered for 25 years and then choosing SBS, from your perspective, I could obviously tell you mine, but what makes SBS different for you?
I mean, SBS is the only place I've worked in the insurance industry, so I have a limited view from that perspective, but I have heard stories from folks like yourself. I've heard stories of clients who moved away from those type of agencies. And it really comes back to, options, right? Options with transparency, options with the best intent for them as the client. I think a lot of them have told me, stories basically summed up that I just felt like another kind of number. I didn't really feel like I was being heard or being given the true scope of what's possible. And so, through the years, sure, we make mistakes, but, at the end of the day, our whole core value is around serving others to the best of our ability. And so when we do that, we know at the end of the day, we're going to get good outcomes. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of large brokerages that look at, shareholders and stock prices and things that are not, they don't directly impact the quality of the benefits that the employers and the employees actually experience.
Is it a passion?
What we do, what I do?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with two of the most important things in someone's life, and that's their health and their money. And that's a responsibility we do not take lightly. And so knowing that every day when we show up for work, there's a really good chance that someone is relying on something that we enacted, that we put in place. And you just can't get that wrong.